Hey everyone, we're back and we're talking about the equipment and technology that you would see in the commercial kitchen. So first we're going to look at the kitchen workflow. So we know that the commercial kitchen layout is based on these four factors: the type of establishment, the amount of available space, menu items, and then the number of meals to be served. Workflow is essentially how well the kitchen's going to flow together so that there's no interruptions, no potential accidents, and that it just makes for an overall smooth day within the kitchen. So we have what we call workstations and work sections. Workstations are areas that contain everything that you're going to need, including the equipment to prepare certain types of foods. So, for example, in this picture, this small little like section right here, we have the whole baking area, which this would actually be called a section. Within the baking area, you probably more than likely have a station like right on this side right here. So this station right here is going to have everything you need to bake cupcakes. Okay. Your work section is when we pair together or group together similar smaller stations into kind of one larger area. So down here, you would probably have some type of working like equipment and things right there that you need for either certain types of ovens, the different types of ovens, and then the actual maybe like a table here to roll out dough and things like that. Maybe you have like a proofing cabinet over here. So all this together would be multiple stations that would make up the entire work section. You happen to see it a lot in this area as well. These are multiple different stations that are going to make up this section right here. So the commercial kitchen is divided into the workstations, like I just explained. Workstations belong to more than one work section. So the more common sections that you're going to have in most restaurants, and these are going to be fully running restaurants. So those that are serving more than likely like a brunch, lunch, and then dinner, or even those that are serving like a breakfast and a lunch and close for dinner. But most of them are going to have these sections. You've got your beverage section, which is going to include your hot beverages like your coffee and your hot teas, and then your cold beverage. So this is going to be your soda station, maybe chocolate milk, orange juice if it's like breakfast. Your garde manger section is going to basically be like your cold prep area. These are going to be a lot of foods that don't require the use of like a grill, an oven, a griddle, anything like that. So it's going to be your salad, your cold platters, like a meat and cheese platter, and then your sandwich station. Unless it's got like a roast beef sandwich in which you do have to partially cook the roast beef, that would all be prepared by one of these other stations over here and then prepped over here for the sandwich to have off to the side. And then they would just kind of package it and use it as needed. Your short order section is going to include your broiler, your griddle, and your fry stations. And then your hot food section will include your broiler, your griddle, and your fry station. And then it will also include your saute, your dry heat, and your steam. So there is a total of 6 stations in this hot food section. And I want you guys to remember that. It includes these three and these three. We know that the layout of the kitchen has direct effect on the workflow. If we have too many stations or sections set up that there's not enough room for physically people to walk around, it's going to potentially cause more injuries and accidents to whether it be the chefs, to the servers, to those who are cleaning, or anything like that. So you want to make sure that the workflow makes for a smooth and harmonious shift. Once the cooking line is set up, its arrangement determines where equipment and storage areas can be placed. So basically, once we have gotten kind of the main bulk of the equipment set up, so that would be like your oven, your sinks, and everything like that, because the sinks will have to be related to where the plumbing is and everything. Once we've determined kind of those big ticket items, then we can figure out where the rest of the storage and where the other kind of smaller equipment can go. So we have different types of cooking lines. So this is a single straight line. All your work is going to be done right here. So this is more like than likely going to be your prep station. Um, Fry, griddles, all of that. Anything that you're going to need is going to be on this one long line right here. Next, we have the L shape. So this work aisle is where you're actually going to be walking around. And then here's your stations right here. So the great part is there is a ton of work of area or working area right here. So you can actually have multiple people in here and not really have to worry about bumping into too many people. Next, we have the U shape. The great thing about the U shape is that it actually cuts down on the amount of walking that you have to do, which will increase your efficiency. However, if these are really close together and there's multiple people working back here, it does create a little bit of a kind of bump in hips and kind of running into each other. So you want to make sure that you communicate clearly and directly to your coworkers. Next is the parallel back to back. So this is essentially saying that think of this like a wall right here where all your equipment would be potentially plugged in and everything like that. So it could be a full wall. It's more likely going to be a half wall because you want to make sure that you have an open line of communication. So this is the back of all the equipment, and this is the front of the equipment where you're actually going to be working. So it's great because your communication is direct with the person that's across from you. So you'll be able to hear them, you'll be able to see them, and you'll be able to coordinate the cooking time so that you're not accidentally cooking your dishes or your part of the dish too fast and they're behind you. And then it comes out that your mashed potatoes are piping hot, but your steak has now gone cold because the cooking times were off. So the parallel back to back, you're working out here and you're facing the person that you're going to be working with. The parallel face to face is opposite. So this is where everything is plugged in, and then you and the other person would be working right here. It's great because you can literally turn around and jump on here and help them, and it literally is as fast as you turning your body and taking a couple steps. With the parallel back to back, you would have to go around all of that. But face to face, you're close together. So to effectively perform mise en place, which is just a fancy way of saying that we're going to make sure we have everything we need to do what needs to get done. So that's getting all your ingredients ready, that's getting all your equipment ready, and that's getting all your small wares, your hand tools, and then your plates all ready together. Okay, you're going to pull that instead of doing something, walking away, doing something else, walking away to have to go and get these different pieces that you need. When you gather everything together, you are able to execute your dishes a lot faster, and then they're going to be on time. We use work simplification techniques involving the use of food, time, energy, and personnel. We want to make sure that we're working smarter and not harder, which sounds a little backwards, but you just want to make sure that you're doing everything in just a smart way, that you are gathering all of your supplies, that if you know you're going to need multiple sets of tongs because you don't want to cross contaminate, then you need to make sure that you grab all the tongs and you're not sacrificing any type of standard to try to get your food out faster. So you just want to make sure that you're not over exhausting yourself by getting these preventative measures in place. So here are some other bits of cooking equipment. Your heat sources we're going to look at, and then we're going to look at some larger size equipment, and then we'll be finished. So we're looking at different types of heat sources. We've got gas, electricity, induction, radiation, your microwaves, and then your lights, your heat lamps, and things like that. So a couple to keep in mind, I want you to take a look at that are probably going to be a little bit more common. Gas is going to be pretty common. This is what we have in the kitchen at school. So this is a natural source that produces intense heat with a flame. At school, we do have a pilot light lit. So if we were to go in there and you guys were to take a look at it, you will see little tiny flames on every single burner. You don't want to blow those out because then we are just releasing gas into the air. And it does create kind of an odd smell to it, but also it will make people extremely lightheaded and dizzy. So when you are working with gas, you do want to make sure that your pilot lights are lit properly and that the actual rest of the stove lights properly as well. Electricity is probably going to be the more common one that you guys have at home. This is very common in homes and then smaller kitchens, not really much of the commercial kitchens. So we're going to cook food with intense heat. The downfall of it that it might cook a little unevenly due to the type of cookware used. So if your pots and pans aren't the greatest and they're made of really cheap material, they're not going to cook your food the greatest. So you just want to make sure that you do kind of invest in a nice set of cooking utensils. The other one I want to look at too is microwave, just because it's the most common one that we have used. It's invisible waves of energy that causes water molecules to rub against each other to produce heat. So that's why typically when you are microwaving things, there is some type of moisture that is in it. If not, things will potentially catch on fire. So if you've ever accidentally went to go heat up some ramen noodles or the cup of noodles and you forgot to add your water, that's why everything starts to burn, and then potentially catch fire and has a really bad smell to it. So it's got to have some type of moisture that's in there. All right, so our cleaning up equipment, we do have this commercial sink at school. We do have a 3 compartment sink like this. It's used to rinse, wash, and sanitize dishes. So it's not meant for 3 people to stand at separately. And then in this sink, I wash everything, I drain it, or I rinse it, drain it, wash it, drain it, and then sanitize it. Typically, what you would tend to do is your middle sink would be used for rinsing. So you wouldn't really necessarily have this full of water, and you would want to have a garbage disposal down there. Large chunks of food you do want to scrape off to the side, but your first one, you would rinse off most of the food that you can. The sink on the left, you would wash it in hot soapy water. You would then rinse that off again, and then your sink on the right would be your sanitizing solution that is food safe. Let it sit in there for the amount of time that the cleaning product, the sanitizing product says, because you want to make sure that you're killing bacteria. The best way to clean all this is to do it, make sure that you let it air dry. Unfortunately, we are on time constraints in our classroom, so we don't always have that opportunity, especially when we have multiple cooking classes. So there will be times that you guys would have had to wash your dishes and then just leave them out to let them dry. At school, we don't quite fully use this process just because we don't have the space for it, and our garbage disposals are actually set opposite. So we have disposals on the left and the right sink, even though we tend to use the middle sink to rinse and everything like that. So it is a little backwards, but we make it work. We want to make sure, again, when I talked about the garbage disposals just a minute ago, it does not replace a trash can. So you cannot just throw everything down there, because it can become clogged very quickly. So we do have glass jars for catching grease and everything like that. Large food items you do scrape off to the side. Now, I would love to have one of these in our classroom, but unfortunately, they're very expensive and there's just no space for them. But it's a commercial dishwasher, so it's also called, some people call it a carousel or the washing carousel, but it's a multi-tank, or a single tank. Essentially, you would rinse all this off with one of these high-powered sprayer nozzles here, rinse off all the chunks of food, you'd put them in these plastic trays, you would then put them, in this kind of set area right here, pull this lever down, it locks it into place, and then it does a whole load of dishes. It can get extremely hot if you lift it up too soon, because it is extremely hot water. You could potentially burn yourself, so you want to just be very careful with that. But it gets it done in minutes. So it's faster than doing everything by hand, which is great, but they do require a lot of space, and we just don't have that space. The last type of equipment we're going to look at is called holding equipment. So basically, the goal of holding equipment is to keep hot foods hot and keep cold foods cold before being served. We also tend to use it too for some of our advantages because some of them are heat controlled, like the proofing cabinet. It's also called a proofer, but it's a freestanding metal box. It tends to be on wheels because you can move them about. You have to make sure that they're going to be plugged in wherever you do move them. It is temperature and humidity controlled. So we call it a proofer because we tend to put bread in there, and because we can control the temperature and the humidity, we can actually get bread to rise a lot faster than if we were to just leave it out in kind of a warmer area. This is a steam table right through here. So it's a type of food warmer that keeps prepared foods warm in serving lines, which is why it's safe for them to keep it out with the hopes that it doesn't completely dry it out like heat lamps would do. And the last one is called a bain-marie. So it's like a water bath system. So you would use it to keep foods such as sauces and soups warm. You can even cook in it as well, like this is doing right now. So they're pouring in hot water into this pan right here. And the goal is that they are very, very carefully and delicately going to heat up the water to kind of help cook this, which this is more than likely a cheesecake or a custard. I'm going to go with custard. So that's everything that you need to know about equipment and technology. Your assignment, I know I've been attaching them on here. Your assignment is actually going to be a Google Doc that will be attached on the classwork tab under week 5. So take a look at that, type directly on it, turn in when complete. And again, if you have any questions, you know to email me or jump on the virtual meeting that we're going to have later this week.